Let's see, I haven't done a video in a while, so I'll try and get caught up in this one. This is just rough shaping a neck. I finally got the neck process down where I'm not having making mistakes. It took me a while, but the biggest thing was trying to figure out how to get the neck set up and clamped down on the table where it wasn't interfering with the way the CNC machine was cutting. And so I finally figured out, I think, a way that works for me anyhow. And so this is just rough shaping the neck. This is taking the final cut now on the neck. So the first one was rough shaping, and actually I think that included some of the final shaping too. It was kind of together in the same video. So I made 3 more necks, so this might have been the second or third one. But anyhow, you can see the rough cuts that was done by the CNC machine, and now this is the smoothing cuts that are done to clean up everything on the after the rough cut. So now I got 4 necks that are mostly done, but there's still some touch up and some cleanup I need to do where the CNC machine can't completely cut. And one of it you'll see is that area I'm pointing to right there has to be at a 4.5 degree angle to match up against the body there, because the neck doesn't sit perfectly parallel the body. It actually leans back at 4.5 degrees. So I got that little box jig you'll see there that I'm going to put the neck inside of, and then I'm going to line up the edges of where the neck meets the body, and then I'll use a router bit and basically route out that mating surface where the two meet, and then that'll help make sure the neck sits back at 4.5 degree angle. The box that I'm sticking the neck inside of right now has already a 4.5 degree angle built into it. This is what I used when I made the last guitar by hand, so I already had this box made. So basically I put the neck inside the box and center it, and then you'll see here in a second how I use that to hold the neck in place while I take it over to the router table and then route in the 4.5 degree angle. So I got to adjust the router bit height so it's just even with the width of the neck that I need. And then I just need to run this box over on each side of the neck, and it's going to trim out the edge to make it the correct angle. Now I'll flip it over, make sure that the router bit is still at the correct height. I think I have to adjust it just a little bit here. And then run it again. And the only reason I'm adjusting it is because the neck, if it's not perfectly centered in that little box, then I need to make sure that the router bit is raised or lowered just to make sure it shaves off just enough material. So now the two sides of the neck are shaved correctly. So I just pull the wedges out real quick, and then I'll rough fit this neck just to show you what I mean as far as the angle. The neck's still not fit yet. There's still some work to do on the neck pocket, but you'll be able to at least see what that router process did. Oops, I must have bumped the camera there. So now there you go. So now you see the 4.5 degree angle on the neck heel there. And so that keeps the neck leaned back at the correct angle when it mates up against the body. The reason the neck has to lean back 4.5 degrees is because the top of the guitar is not flat. It's got that arch top, and so when you put the bridge on top of it, the strings are going to sit higher, so the neck has to lean back just a few degrees to allow the strings to reach up to the top of that arch and not hit against the body. Here I'm just getting a couple sanding blocks ready. These are foam pads that I use as sanding blocks. And sanding the side of the guitar because I'm getting ready to route a channel for the binding. And I want to make sure that the sides of the guitar that the bearing follows are nice and smooth, so the bearing follows a smooth surface and cuts a smooth channel into the top of the guitar. I'm not worried about finish sanding or getting the guitar ready to, smooth enough or looking good enough to finish. I just need the bearing to be smooth as it rides against the side of the guitar so the channel is cut smooth. This is doing the same thing on one of the other guitars, and it's just, again, I'm smoothing the side just to make sure that the bearing has something smooth to run against. I think I forgot I had the sander even, and so I never sand by hand if I have a choice. So this one smooths a lot quicker, obviously. You just got to be careful when you're sanding it not to ever stop the guitar while it's in contact with the sander. Make sure it's moving, that way you don't accidentally sand a groove or a divot into the side of the guitar. Because once you do that, then you got it's done. You got to patch it or fill it or whatever. So you just got to make sure that you're moving the guitar so it doesn't accidentally sand away from one side. This is the jig that I use for cutting the binding channel, and it's basically just a router that's mounted inside this jig that I made. It's got some drawer slides and a Lazy Susan bearing on the bottom, but basically what it does is it allows me to use this laminate trimmer that I have here to keep the router completely at 90 degrees to the body, because if you remember, the body's arched, and so if you were to just normally just let it ride along the side of the guitar, it would lean sideways because of the arch top, and you don't want it leaning sideways. You want the binding channel that cut totally perpendicular to the top. So this jig helps hold the trimmer straight up and down, so it'll cut a nice 90-degree angle in there. And then you'll see me with a pencil. I was just marking some of the grain locations so I can make sure I'm trimming in the right direction as the bearing follows along. That way I don't have the trimmer tearing out or pulling pieces of the top away. So you always want to route out with the grain if possible, not against the grain. Otherwise you're going to have tear out or possibility of tear out. So the bearing is just following along the side that we just sanded, and it's taken away about 6 millimeters of material by 2 millimeters deep. And once the channel is done, I'll just take a piece of binding and make sure it fits nice and smooth in the channel. Nothing else needs cut off. In the binding, it'll be a little bit oversized once it fits in the channel, and then once it's glued in, it'll be scraped and sanded smooth so it's nice and clean. On to the next one. Now I'm just getting ready with the binding channels cut, getting ready to glue the binding in. So in this case, there's a couple ways to do it. I'm just going to use acetone. I also have binding glue there, but binding glue is basically acetone mixed with some of the binding material, and it makes it into like a paste. But anyhow, I'm going to dry fit the binding completely around the guitar and kind of tape it in place. And I'll use the heat gun a little bit to help soften the plastic and help it hold into the place. The plastic is what they called ABS plastic. I'm not sure what that stands for, but anyhow, the plastic, it'll when you mix acetone with it, it'll turn soft and almost turn into like a glue. And then when it dries, it'll dry, glued to whatever it's touching the wood there. So I'm going to put the binding in place. Once everything looks good, I can basically go ahead and dry fit it, tape all the areas, make sure there's no gaps. Then I'll just take that acetone with a brush and wick it in along the entire side of the guitar. Between all the tape and the acetone will melt the plastic, and then when the plastic hardens back up, it'll harden like glue attached to the wood.